the entire world. Uh, that's why we're having a remote conversation via Zoom and not inside, coming from your space or one of our many different studios that we record out of. So I guess, Richard, let's just start, and maybe either of you can answer this, but let's just start with kind of a broad overview. Just give us the background on what Soundspace is, and then let's kind of dive into what that means now, because I know that you guys had recently launched the beta, and we're waiting on the full space to open up. So.
For sure. So Soundspace is really born out of, I've been musical my whole life. And right as I was graduating college from IUPUI, actually, I looked around and I hadn't recorded for a very long time. And I had this backlog of songs that I really, really wanted to get a snapshot of, really get that down and recorded so I could have it for the future. And when I started looking around, I realized that it was quite expensive to go into studios and to try and really sit down or even learn how I would make a home studio or investment into a home studio. There was a whole bunch of barriers that I was encountering. And as I looked around, I thought, well, I can't be the only person who thinks this way or the only person who's experiencing this problem. And so I basically just went around and started asking as many musicians as I could find, hey, what kind of problems are you experiencing with recording, or what kind of issues are there in the local scene? And what we kind of, boiled it down to was three main spaces, which actually became our three main membership types as the beta sort of launched and became a thing as well, which were Connect, Rehearse, and Record. And so Connect is actually the most sort of ethereal and interesting one to me, where you had this shift happen with the advent of streaming services, Spotify, all of these new kind of things that it pushed people into their home studios. It pushed people sort of away from each other into more online sort of resources. And Connect is that whole purpose of bringing people back together and bringing together that local music scene. So if you're in your bedroom, you may not know that there's a marketer that lives across the street from you, right? That could help you a ton with what it is that you're doing in terms of pushing out your online music and really learning what it is that you can progress and develop that career fully into music. And so the Connect side of things is there to really bring people together. And then Rehearse and Record are somewhat more self-explanatory, where we have physical space to come in, do your rehearsals and do your recording. But the twist on that is it works more like a gym, like a shared space, than it would typically a lockout space or what you would normally find in the music industry. And it's there to really provide you a home base, but one that you can share with other people locally. And what that does is it really cuts down on the personal cost to the musician. And our main goal there is just we want to lower the barrier to entry for being a musician, so you can afford to go out and develop your career in music in this kind of new economic environment created by things like streaming and a lot more of the online services available to people.
That's awesome. And I love that from what you said there, that really kind of stuck out to me was you mentioned, like, if somebody was that Connect part, if somebody was looking for like marketing help, right? Like, I think my initial assumption would have been like, this is just all about musicians, people making music together, and not thinking about, okay, what are these other adjacent industries or skills, right, necessarily that musicians need to help have like a robust business built around their craft.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting because it used to be that making it in music was, going out, finding a record deal, really pitching to those record companies and labels. And then what they would do would be they were able to before create CDs and really, really make huge profit margins on those things. And so what they would do would be pay for your studio time, and then you would be able to come in and basically make the product, right? And so with the advent of streaming, you can put your music directly out to the consumer. And so it kind of pushed people into more entrepreneurial roles where they couldn't quite afford the profit margins that would put them into large name studios to really produce their craft. But you can sort of, get into that larger scale music career just by sitting in your home studio and producing tracks. And so as you sort of lost that connective touch, you kind of lost track of all of the auxiliary things that a label would do as well, in terms of connecting you with other people locally that were your marketing team, that were your business team. And any entrepreneur in their early stages really needs a whole lot of help with how is it that you know, follow this path and really create a company, or create, you have to treat your musical career like you're becoming a company,
Right.
right? And so for me, it was, what would I do if I was really going to delve into a career in music, and how can I help other people follow that sort of the best route to do that? And so what I would do would be immediately start an LLC, get started with what I'm doing there. That way you have tax benefits to what's going on. You find a local, credit union for the best possible lending that you would need for your LLC, for anything you need for startup capital. There's a whole lot of this back end sort of, almost hidden knowledge that people wouldn't really know of unless they had started a business, or had done other things in their life that really gave them that specialized knowledge. And what we want to do is to make that more accessible, and just really make it the common standard to say, hey, here's how you can really go out and really trim all of the fat away from your music career, and really start to aim towards becoming that musical middle class. So that's a lot of what we aim towards, is trying to help people go from, okay, you're playing, local shows at random bars and all of these kind of places, all the way up through now you're touring around and, going from state to state, playing huge crowds. And that's sort of, musical between those two spaces, is I think a middle class that is really, really underserved, and it's not very clear about how you go through that phase up into that sort of musical upper class in either. So
Right. And I can speak from experiences. I mean, there's a ton of growing pains. I was in a touring band for about 3 years after college, and I wish we knew a lot of shortcuts that it sounds like you're like helping people put together, because at that time it was more like you just have to grind it out, right? And that was
for
the
sure.
plan. It's like you just keep playing longer than other people, and you'll make it, which is
Hmm.
totally not the case.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is very much so a specialized knowledge kind of game, and it helps a lot to have a team on your side, which is I think a lot of what we bring with Soundspace, is really providing that sort of team atmosphere. And our goal was just to create a banner at the beginning that you could reach out to and ask questions of, and really gain that specialized knowledge. And what that's most recently become is workshops for various members, and just for the community in general. And I think a lot of that culminated with our first mixer event as well, where we just decided to host a general mixer for anybody in the music scene to come out to, and just kind of meet other people in the music scene locally. And we held it at a time that we thought most people would probably be able to make it. And then we made it a regular thing. So you can just always know that there's a networking event themed around music, or you can come find new band members, or you can meet people in the music industry, music business, who basically would be managers, marketers, all of the team members that you would need to do to really create a successful music career.
Right. And Kyle, I want to get to you. How did you get involved with Soundspace? Like, where was that intersection between you and Rick? Where did you guys meet? And yeah, how'd you get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I was nearing graduation from the University of Indianapolis. Came out there from actually where I'm at now, up quarantined at my parents' house back here in Ohio. Uh, Went out there, studied public relations, and started doing the photography and videography things on the heels of my soccer career there, and made it a pointed effort to go out and integrate in the city, get very involved. One of the things that I love locally is coffee shops. And for me, Calvin Fletcher's became home base. And as I was nearing that end of term at school, I befriended everybody there at the coffee shop, first name basis with the baristas. One of my good friends there, Daniel Balmer, is actually Ricky's roommate. And it started out as, hey, my roommate has this really cool idea and he needs some marketing help. Would you sit down and have a conversation with him? And I think that was November of 2018, November 12th, if I remember, because we went back and looked it up, and sat down, and Rick had a one-page synopsis of what he hoped a Soundspace could be. At the time, it wasn't called that. It was just a cool idea, a couple paragraphs under the name of Fruition Audio. And right away, not only did I think the concept was brilliant, but I definitely had an unequivocal belief in the person that I was sitting across from. And I'm not just saying that because he's on the other line. I came away thinking that it was one of the most intelligent and empathetic people that I'd ever met, and that I'd figured that out in about 5 minutes. So as we talked through the idea and his knowledge base and his history, it seemed to be an interesting opportunity and something that was definitely needed within our city and community from what I had experienced locally as well. And I think about a year to the day later, we ended up opening the beta to our first paying member. So
Who was the first paying member?
ooh, Rick, do you know?
Oh man, they would kill us for not knowing. Well, we had at least 12 people sign up on the first day, so I don't know that. You know what? I'll look it up.
And Kyle, aside from your belief in this vision that Rick had, did you have ties personally to music, musicianship? Like, is there something that drew you to that type of community?
I did not have any specific musical background. I think for me, what I was able to look back on and realize that from my kind of ping pong career or early adult path out into this beginning of a career phase, I was able to always take part in things that were pretty universal and that I fundamentally believed in being accessible. So I played soccer, did photography and videography, very into the wellness side of things, both from a physical standpoint as an athlete and a trainer, as well as the more holistic side of meditation and nutrition and things like that, coffee as well. And then music is another one of those very universal languages and things that I think speaks to everyone. So for me, it was a very interesting opportunity to get to know a new community of people. And as I look back, 18 months or so later, it's really interesting to see how incredibly welcoming those people have been and how responsive they've been. I have been writing lyrics and spoken word things for a couple years now, and I told myself once the Soundspace opened, I'd be out of excuses. So a couple months ago, I actually went and did my first open mic down at Square Cat Vinyl and shared some spoken word. And now
That's awesome.
and yeah, it was really good. It was definitely exciting. I shared some very heavy personal stuff. I figured if I could do that with no background music comparatively. So now this time has given me of sheltering in place to do more writing, and I'm actually working on workshopping some more stuff right now and shooting some videos around them. So
That's awesome. And this whole concept of Soundspace and really cultivating this community for musicians and uplifting that class of creative, I think is especially important. And I don't want to speak out of school, so this is like total bro science on my part, but you see the stuff that the city's doing to try to figure out what the economy or the economic impact of the music scene is here in Indianapolis, because it looks like we have a thriving music scene, but it seems like it's an underserved community that kind of lacks cohesion, right? And it's just one of those things where by nature it's going to be competitive over the amount of attention that it requires, right? Like you need to sell tickets to get people to come pay attention to you, or you need people to buy your music or listen to your music.
Sure.
So this it sounds like you guys are trying to build an infrastructure through Soundspace to help like those people have that community that it deserves.
For sure. We oftentimes think about it like a chicken and egg conundrum, where it's almost like, hey, why aren't we Nashville, or why aren't we these other, huge name cities in music? And it's because we're Indianapolis and we have our own thing going on. But
Right.
it's also that a lot of people are like, well, where's that big name artist that's doing this or this or this? And there's a lot of people out there that they just don't check themselves back to Indianapolis as the place where they started, because maybe they came from here and went to another city, or like left or did these kind of things. But that's not to say that Indianapolis doesn't have those those people and those talents. It's more so that I don't think we have the infrastructure necessary to really help somebody grow all the way to where they need to go. And that's what I think a lot of people are trying to figure out and develop here. And so that chicken and egg conundrum is, hey, where are these huge name artists from Indianapolis? And well, I would question you to say, where's the infrastructure to create huge name artists in Indianapolis? And so it's at some point, one of those things has to give. And so our goal is basically, hey, let's just create some infrastructure and see what happens, basically. Go ahead.
When you say infrastructure, what do you mean by that?
Sure. So there's plenty of places to play. There's plenty of places that you could go and really take advantage of what's available locally. But in terms of sharing, artists that would help other artists and share your things, there's places where you can come and record and rehearse and really kind of develop your craft more. And I think really just through a lot of our three main membership kind of areas, regardless of whether it's us providing those things, but just those things in general for the city, making sure that you're connected to that local scene, making sure you have like solid rehearsals, you're regularly rehearsing, and you're going through sort of that crucible of hearing other people's music, giving them feedback, and being honest with that feedback and making sure that people can have the chance to progress and improve upon their music. And then all the way up into recording, where you're coming through and really doing some interesting things, and practicing with recording and developing more interesting sounds that are unique to Indianapolis, just because you're mixing with those people locally, and you're hearing all of what's in that local scene, right? So that infrastructure is more so, I think, it's an issue, I think, in a lot of around all of Indianapolis, where we have really, really cool things going on. But a lot of them are built up on silos as opposed to being well connected to each other. And so I think what a lot of our efforts have been recently is to try and become more connected. And I think as that happens and as that develops further, you'll see, Indianapolis just blow up with support, with huge name people, with a lot of great things. We're on the precipice, I think, of becoming a really great city for music in that way. And I think that there's a lot of other places, venture capital, a lot of other areas where there's some interesting things happening in Indianapolis. And I think through connecting and through those interactions with other people, we'll see huge progress.
Yeah, and one of the other things, and this is why I ask about infrastructure, because that can involve a lot of different things, and I've been wrestling with this idea. I'm a huge advocate for Indianapolis, our creatives, our business owners, our entrepreneurs, obviously, but I have this like feeling, and again, I wrestle with this concept that I feel like we have so much cool shit going on, whether it's music or restaurants or tech, whatever it is, but like people within Indianapolis fail to see how cool it is, and until it's like it doesn't get the support that it deserves, and then it dies off, and then people lament the fact that it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Like you had this huge opportunity while the thing was going to support the hell out of it and scream it from the mountaintop, right? And like really push it forward and get it on this like national field, right? And give it national attention, but like we don't do that.
For sure. And so I think that's a lot of the connecting that's necessary, and trying to make sure that whenever you see something like that, that we're making people aware of that. You have to share it, you have to bring it out there and really give people that credit. And I think you guys are doing a great job of that with Drink Culture as well, and really allowing at least small business and businesses in general and really cool people locally the chance to really shout out what it is that they're doing, and help to push that out to more and more people. And I think more things along those natures, and people, this kind of leads me into a concept of the social media side of things too, where it's like when you see something happening in local music right now, everybody's just online because of this whole the outbreak and everything, and the pandemic. And what we're doing is everybody's taken to online and has started to share all of the local music that they can find, and trying to make sure that scene can live on, at least while we can't have those large scale live events, live on in that online space, and to try to be more supportive. I mean, imagine if we did that all the time, even when we did have large events, right? Or live events happening. Like if there was that thriving online space and the thriving, live event space, that you'd see a much larger growth, I think, in the music scene as well. So if we can keep up that vigor from what we have going on there, and when live events do come back, I think you'll see a boon and a huge progression to the music scene there too. It's just to remind, hey, log on and just share the music that you see in your feed, or just, leave likes and comments, and just kind of keep sharing local music, because there's a lot of it that's really, really good. And those artists need to know which of their tracks is really, really good and being pushed forward, and then which other ones are like, hey, I'd like it if you did maybe this in this track, and then maybe they produce something that has that in that track, and it's much better now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Kyle, how, you know, uh, who are you guys like marketing this to? Established musicians, up and comers? Like, how are you guys getting the word out, and who do you think is important to have kind of bought in at such an early phase?
Yeah, it's a great twofold question there. In terms of who we had in mind, really our whole goal is to conglomerate artists of all genres and all walks of life from our city. We're very intentional about that with our branding within the space itself. You don't see like a primary color on the wall. You don't see our name plastered everywhere. We want people to walk in and feel like it's their home away from home, but that ultimately they stand up a little bit straighter and they do a bit better work while they're there. One of the first things I asked for within that marketing role was going out and developing a team of artists representatives, basically community ambassadors for us, right? So we went from your paragons of the local scene, like a Sleepy Floyd, drummer with Native Son, or to a Sirius Black, to Jared and Joshua Thompson, all the way down to some younger, less established, singer-songwriters like Alex Frank or Allison Victoria, kind of making that leap to do things with either a fledgling record label or just making the jump to be an artist full-time. So we thought it was very important that if we didn't get during that crowdsourcing of information phase when we initially started, and we continue to do that as often as possible with our design thinking approach to things, if we didn't get those feedback from all of those communities, that it would be, if we don't want to build something that no one wants or no one's going to necessarily use, right? We had floor plan ideas and things in mind, and Joshua walked in, took one look, and was like, well, if there's not a piano in here, my people aren't served. Not something we had taken into consideration when thinking about rehearsal and recording space, right? But it immediately becomes this light bulb in your head where, of course they need a piano. They're classical musicians. So for us, on the artist level, it's taking a lot of those things into account. And then from a higher partnership level, we went out and we just championed this thing locally on behalf of those people. We organically, through those artist reps and through our own efforts, we had almost 300 musicians sign up in about a 4 or 5 month period to a pre-registration form on our site, fill out that, say they were interested in becoming a part of what Soundspace had to offer. We did that with no paid advertisement and did that all organically, and amassed like 2,500 social media followers in that short, like 4-month launch period. So in addition to that, myself, Rick doesn't drink the coffee, but I went out and probably had 200 or 300 coffees with some people in the city, and just got that feedback. And, that resulted in some great core integral partners like Sam Ash Music up on the north side, Auralex Acoustics, who is an international sound treatment distributor located right here in Fishers, that, almost no one knows that they're local. They're just a name on a box. Indie String Theory was one of our first supporters down near Fountain Square. They're just about to go into a great new space on the other side of this. Our first investor was Tamika Catchings.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we went out in a very local approach with what we were doing, and very organically, and some other great partners like the orchestra and the choir, musical family tree. I don't want to leave too many people out, but overall the support has been totally overwhelming from a local scene. And there's a reason Never Not Local is stamped on some of our apparel. For us, we thought it was just totally integral that we get those people involved and get their feedbacks before we ever open the doors, so that we could build something that truly is equitable and accessible for all of those different genres and people.
That's awesome. And this anything that like you guys had seen run successfully in any other cities?
Not at the time that we were looking at it. I mean, you see some other somewhat similar things, but nothing to the same degree of what we're putting together. And like, for example, there's 2112 in Chicago, which is a pretty good example of rehearsal space and kind of bringing together co-working for music business. But it doesn't quite hit exactly the same kind of, shared space idea of what we're putting together with Soundspace. And so there's a few other ones, but nothing at the time that we're putting anything together that we really saw anything happening in other cities that was like this. So
That's awesome. And just like some kind of quick, just like establishing questions, like for people that are unfamiliar with Soundspace, like where is the official like location? Where's that at? Like how does a membership work there? Like walk me through kind of both of those things. One, just where are you guys located? Both the beta and then the official space that's going to be opening up. And then if I wanted to sign up, or if somebody listening wanted to sign up, what does that membership look like?
Yeah, if I'll take the space location question. We are in the Circle City Industrial Complex on the east end of Mass Ave. So our current beta location is right next door to Centerpoint Brewing. So if people just GPS us Soundspace on Google Maps, Uber, Lyft, anywhere, they can get right to our doorstep there. And we are building out our full-scale Soundspace proper, as we refer to it, also in the CCIC there as part of the new redevelopment getting built out later this year. So we've just been able to recently finalize our floor plans there. We're going to have 2 studios, 7 rehearsal rooms, and some other learning capable space. And all of those will function 24/7 on a member easy access point. So
That sounds, how many square feet is that?
Rick, do you know the final measurement on that?
probably just upwards of 6,000 square feet for the main space. We're right next door. Also, there will be a live venue that we're looking at. So I don't know if that's been totally unveiled yet, but we're looking at maybe a 700 cap venue that would be an all ages space that we're aiming to bring out and basically allow that for any kind of events to come into that area. And that whole championing there is for the never not local side of it, making sure that there's a place that in all ages and local music has to come in and really play whatever show they envision. Just trying to see, how can we take local music to that next level of going to a place to see a show that is local and is also really, really freaking good and gives people just that the total immersion and the total capability to put on a large scale show in that space.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, Rick, you have a lot of experience in music. Talk a little bit about the background there.
Sure. So I was so the first time I played music was in high school, I think, maybe a little bit earlier. I started learning guitar. I broke my arm, and then I just kept learning while my arm was broken, but I couldn't actually play the guitar. And then after I was finished with that, I've had, I think, 5 or 6 different teachers across my lifetime that were all really, really pivotal in sort of helping me progress. And so I hearken a lot of my expertise back to actually a husband and wife teacher combo that lived just a door down from me. They were the Fells was their last name. Basically, the wife there, they met and were in a large touring band for a very long time, and then decided to give lessons just to local students when they were finished with that sort of life. And so the wife was my singing teacher for a really long time, and Brian Fells was her husband, who was my guitar teacher. And I liken a lot of my love for music to my time spent with him, mainly because they were only supposed to be half-hour lessons, and they ended up sometimes being 2.5-hour lessons. And they never charged me more for those particular lessons. It was just like time spent learning and really developing that craft and that love. And that pushed me to become I was in jazz band as I was going throughout high school. was one of the top seats in the state for that kind of thing. And then just kind of progressed to go to Berkley College of Music in Boston for a semester before I ended up pursuing science and coming to IUPUI, where basically when I was in high school, I took a test that was like, what college should you go to? I clicked both of the majors I was interested in, and it said you have one of one result. So I was kind of told where to go by a computer program. I ended up going to IUPUI and graduating with both of those majors. I was the first one to do that, and probably the last one because they were really strange majors to put together. But it was neuroscience and biotechnology. So I did both of those and kind of came out of that, with 4 years of music kind of just in backlog, ready to be recorded, which kind of leads into my previous story about how Soundspace came to be. So.
Wow. Yeah, you don't really see the combination of those three.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, but it's in hindsight, it led me to exactly where I am today. So it's kind of an interesting conglomeration.
Fabian, do you not know another biotechnically proficient neuroscientist that also plays classical guitar? They're everywhere.
Yeah, no, but it's funny to hear you say that. We've been talking a lot about fate lately on the show, and to hear you say that in hindsight, you kind of needed those skills, or maybe
for
not
sure.
even those skills, but those kind of played a huge role. I think whenever we reflect, and I use the collective we as in everybody, you kind of look at these series of events or moments in your life that are kind of pivotal, right? That take you in one direction over the other, and when you start to think about the things that were laid in front of you to get you to where you are, or the thing that you're doing that you love or your passion, like you can find this weird series of events where you're like, if that didn't happen, like I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. There's one that takes me right back to I know that Kyle mentioned my roommate Daniel Ballmer a little bit earlier. I hearken like a lot of where I am today back to just this one decision where we had 10 days coming up where we had just no school, no anything going on. And we were like, okay, what can we do with a 10-day stretch of time? Most people would be like, let's go to the other side of the country or like do something crazy travel wise. And we were like, okay, we're just going to do something that you can't normally do in 10 days of time. And so we decided that was our only restriction. And then we decided, what are we actually going to do with that period of time? And so what we decided on was we called it the 10-day challenge. I don't think it ever really took off or anything like that. But we spent 10 days straight just trying to help as many people as we could. And so the way that took form was we sat in a lot of coffee shops and just put up a sign that said "Free Courage," and had a bunch of people just kind of stop by and talk with us. And we just talked with them for as long as they were willing to talk with us, and just kind of gave them minor motivational speeches, just to try and generally spread good feelings and try to help motivate people to pursue dreams that they had that maybe they were talking about but never hadn't really kicked over the edge to go there. And one of the people we decided to help was happened to be a professor at IUPUI that I was good friends with as well. And he brought us in to start working on a company of his that kind of led me to meet my mentor in business, who's out in California. And we, I got involved with one of his startups and helped him with that as well, which became this sort of, we work with biogasification. And so we ended up.
What the hell is biogasification? I'm gonna stop you there.
Yeah. So gasification is like burning things but without smoke. So I ended up I guess I should talk a little bit about my personal my personal kind of pillars of what I aim to do is, number one, things I want to make everything make financial sense. So I as a CEO and as somebody who's helping people locally and helping musicians, I want to make everything have a financial incentive and make sense to do, right? And so I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with their finances. But as a part of that, there's two other big pillars. One of them is I want to have a positive community impact, and the other one is I want to have a positive environmental impact. And so everything that I do is trying to help early stage startups, help with people, and try to progress the community and the environment while making things make financial sense. And I kind of talk about it like making capitalism, even though it's inherently a system that depends upon exploitation of like in both the world, you know, capacity, I guess, and between different classes of people in terms of socioeconomics. I at least want to, you know, if it's the system we're sticking with, I want to make it positive, right? So we want to make it conscious. We want to be aware of what's going on, and we want to try and make it into how can we leverage even things that we are traditionally viewed as sort of exploitative into positives, or how can we give back to the people who would be negatively impacted by the systems that are in place. And so it's more of an, I guess, an equity-based thing, and it's more so this concept of really trying to be as altruistic as you can, but making it fit into the current system in a way that you're kind of using it against itself, I guess.
Right. Right.
So Rick, how is biogasification that?
Oh, so biogasification is.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, I gotcha. So it's burning without smoke, basically. So what you can do is you can change things like garbage and anything that basically any kind of woody material, any kind of garbage, any kind of organic matter. When you subject it to extreme heat, normally it would catch fire, right? Or it would just kind of, you'd see a fire, and that fire is a chemical reaction. So it would change whatever's in that, like the energies and the things that are in that material. It would change it into carbon dioxide and all of these other sort of excess gases that would be burned and become smoke. With gasification, you raise the heat of those things without actually letting it catch fire. And when that happens, what you're left over with is everything that would be chemically changed normally is left over as a biochar, which is actually a soil amendment, meaning that you can put it onto, like, it's basically fertilizer. So you're left over with fertilizer, and then also the gases that come off that weren't chemically changed still have a lot of those energies in them. So what you can do is you can turn that energy into things like hydrogen, into things like clean burning fuels. And if you do it the way that we've kind of gone about that, we've made it in a way where it's at the very least carbon neutral, if not carbon negative, to actually carry out the process. So you can turn things like garbage into clean fuels and fertilizer. So that's a really powerful technology, and something that we've been looking into. How is it that we can get that out there faster and really, help affect local communities by, the whole process itself creates electricity as well. So how is it that you can create small microgrids? What kind of energy efficiency? It's sort of like another passion of mine that I've just been working on that kind of got me to this point. But
You're telling me that 10 years from now, Richard Anderson will put out the first garbage car.
I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. It's what we've been talking about for a while, and maybe some of the timelines are a little bit off, but I think certainly we're headed towards a hydrogen economy and towards more clean burning fuels, and I think a lot of people are becoming more environmentally conscious, and I just want to make sure that people are becoming more community conscious while they do that.
I just want to say, Fabian, that there are times in the office where we will walk into Rick's office and be like, "Hey, have you seen this microphone?" And he'll be like writing a science formula on the board about hydrogen.
It's certainly a multidisciplinary office. But
So, I mean, how do you leverage those? Like, how do you leverage that into music, right? Like,
sure.
helping musicians. Where do you see that correlation?
So, with any kind of, oh, go ahead.
No, I said if there even is one.
Sure. So I guess I hearken it back to everybody's an entrepreneur right now, and it's kind of just become that way. And especially for music, right? So even though I have all these kind of specialty science knowledges, just because that's what I studied and that's what I kind of kept pursuing in the background, I think what I really learned was how is it that you take something that you're really, really passionate about in your heart, and you follow it to a degree that you start something, right? You jump on it, you find what you need to put together, and entrepreneurship overall is really just how do you fund it, right? So where do you actually get materials? Where do you get things from? And how do you really, really start that thing? That's entrepreneurship. Otherwise, there's sort of this other quality of leadership, this other quality of drive, and that you kind of want to see in an entrepreneur. but entrepreneurship itself is its own skill. And so, as you kind of develop that, we noticed that all of what we were seeing in early stage companies that wanted to start something like, hey, we have this really great technology idea, which is who I was helping for the longest time with my other company, Argona, in terms of consulting. But we were helping sort of these high tech people kind of get started with their businesses and develop further and be entrepreneurs, even though they were coming from science. We saw almost exactly the same thing, but on a local and much smaller scale with sort of burgeoning artists, right? So as you get started with your in the same way that a scientist would have a great invention, you as an artist have a great song, or you have a great style of music, or you have your own IP there, right? Your own intellectual property. And then you want to take that into the next level and create a career, create a business. You want to pursue that further. And so encouraging and finding those people who want to keep pursuing that, then that was really where I saw a lot of those same skills directly transfer. And okay, how can I help these people progress, and what kind of resources can we provide, and what sort of pathway should we advise that people go down? And so it actually became sort of this micro environment of music entrepreneurship that kind of was the start of a lot of these concepts of why do we partner with the partners that we partner with in Soundspace, and why is it that we look for particular things, like I mentioned LLCs earlier, and I mentioned we actually partnered recently with Elements Financial because they offer basically, so if you started an LLC, they offer zero fees business banking, which means that as an artist, if you're going to go into this whole path, you can treat your business bank account like a personal bank account because there's not regular fees. You don't have to worry about being basically, with any other large scale bank, you would still have fees. But Elements has a barrier of entry to it, right? So you have to be a particular thing. It used to be a select employer group in order to become a member of Elements. And most people wouldn't know that. And so what we did was we talked with Elements and asked them if our members could become a select employer group. And Elements was actually really open to the idea. And so now, as a Soundspace member, if you start your LLC, you can do your business banking with Elements, no problem. And so it's there to basically get past those barriers that people wouldn't personally be able to get past, but to be able to pull those things and provide them to members that you wouldn't normally be able to access, but would absolutely be something me as Ricky would be going through and really, going after myself if I was trying to really make it in music, right? So I wanted to try and, rather than solve it for just me, solve it for anybody who's ever going to have to go through that problem. Because I don't like the concept of just solving it once. You have to just solve the systematic issue that's there.
That's really, really cool. You guys mentioned investors, Tamika Catching being one of them. I mean, like, how big of an undertaking is 6,000 square feet, potential music venue, recording studios, equipment, setting up this type of infrastructure? If you guys can get into a little bit of that.
Sure. So it has been an undertaking for sure. What's interesting is the bootstrap capability of it, and I don't know if your listeners or if you're familiar with the term bootstrapping, but it's oftentimes in the very early stage of a business when somebody tries to put together what it is that they can possibly put together without really pulling in a whole bunch of funding. So what you have available to you, what's the smallest minimum viable product you could offer somebody that somebody would still want to basically either pay for, or how is it that you really create your business without really creating your whole business, right? And so we, as we looked around, we had a $1 million round open for venture capital. And as we were talking with people, we were trying to pitch them basically on an empty warehouse and say, here's our good idea, right? And so we knew that there needed to be some bootstrapping involved there. And so as we looked around and talked with more partners and developed further, a lot of people helped us bootstrap to where we are today, which was opening up the beta space. And the reason we called it Soundspace Beta is because we were pitching this really, really great larger space for so long, trying to really get that down for all of the people of the local scene, making sure that we could provide all of the things we were promising. And as we opened up beta, we were like, okay, this is a complete shift in what we were doing, and just a complete scale down to that minimum viable. What is it that we can provide right now to people? And it doesn't mean that we're not planning on providing Soundspace proper. It just means that we were scaled down into beta, and now we have to make sure how is it that we keep beta running and get it to a point that it can be used as a leverage point to say, hey, this is what we want to do. We just want to do it larger. So please, can you help us do that, to investors, to banks, and to pitching for those kind of funds. And like I mentioned earlier, it's a really tough place to navigate venture capital or finding funding in Indianapolis as well. Much in the same way it's difficult to be an entrepreneur in music, it's difficult to be an entrepreneur in anything else. Besides, I guess, maybe tech, but even in tech, I'm not just going to discount their struggles or anything. It's just that the state provides a lot more assistance to try and help with the technology sector. But there's not a lot of resources available besides like things if you go through the Indie Chamber or Business Ownership Initiative for local businesses that really, really want to develop further, that aren't in specifically the tech sector. And so an interesting thing with us is we're actually looking at technologies for Connect, the membership. So you'll actually probably see a tech business come out of us at some point here soon, that is aimed towards helping people connect in that way, because we have a lot of great data we're pulling from people, and people are telling us, hey, we want to connect. We want to find that marketer who's across the street and really be able to develop that relationship with them further. And so, with that, we can take advantage of it. But even when we were applying for things like tax credits or, trying to progress as a business for Soundspace overall, you end up hitting these sort of walls that people are like, oh, sorry, you're not tech, and so that's my goal would be to help provide assistance to all kinds of different businesses.
Yeah. If I could touch on this a little bit as well, I think you really get into in regards to not only the undertaking for us, but as well for the artists, you get into the goal ultimately, right? I don't know if we've just outright said our mission statement in full, but it's that to erase the barriers to a professional music career so that people can afford to be a musician. And we try to do that equitably and sustainably, and affordably. So in terms of that sustainability, right, if we're able to reinvent a model within an industry where post-streaming era that we can now, provide rehearsal space for $80 a month, recording accessibility for $150 a month, but this general connectivity that comes with that after you've saved those hundreds or thousands of dollars on the year, and you're able to do things in a more financially responsible manner and treat your musicianship like the business that it is, it's where it goes back into this siloed problem of our city that's multidisciplinary is where do you go for that videographer? Where do you go to get a booking agent? Where do you go to get to the barber? Where do all these things that are required or ancillary requirements of your musical career, and how do you allow those things to cross-pollinate and prosper? So it really comes down to an interesting thing where I don't think the brick and mortar alone is just enough, but I don't think tech is just enough on its own either, where you have this, these bedroom producers, these people with these home studios. Those things, though they're awesome, and it's great that we have the technology to be able to build that into 2020, those weren't born out of necessarily a desire. They were bred out of necessity, that the studios weren't affordable and the models no longer served the artist. People weren't selling CDs for 2,000% profit and getting awesome margins on a record deal. So as that money's dried up, we hope to invent a better model that does create that sustainability within, our local economy and provide those resources so those people can connect with one another. So
that's awesome. Thank you for mentioning the mission statement. I think that's great. I heard a rumor that you guys, your face lit up. I heard a rumor that you guys, maybe it was you, Kyle, maybe it was somebody else, you guys made a connection at one of our live events for someone that eventually ended up investing some money with you guys. Is that true or untrue? Maybe I just made it up because I wanted to be cool.
I think, no, we definitely did connect with some partners, and it might have been a degree of separation thing. But we definitely, we were able to interact with, a couple of local community leaders that put us in touch with some of those people. I can name drop them.
No, I mean, no, you don't have to.
But yeah, no, going to the drink culture event, there were some really cool people from the city there. And you know, it's crazy, right? If you do something local and grassrooted, and then you provide a place for those people to come, it's almost like local grassrooted people
Well,
show
I
up.
never know who the hell is interested in the stuff that you're putting. You know what I mean? Like I'm always amazed at who decides to show up and who's in a room. And for like everybody comes there for their own reasons. We're gonna start to kind of bring this in. I completely switched topics with my scatterbrain. I had asked you earlier about membership and what that looks like. So like
Oh
if
yeah.
you have like a perfect day for your persona, right? Like the person that is utilizing the space to the ultimate max, like what does full membership look like for them in a perfect scenario?
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Go
so
ahead.
I'm yeah, absolutely. So as part of, you know, that community being end to end, from the connect all the way up to that potential venue side of things, we really are building this pathway to musicianship within our city, right? So our three membership tiers: connect, rehearse, and record. They serve as building blocks on top of one another, and they're also stackable in terms of membership, meaning if you're a record member, you have access to the rehearsal capabilities and the general connect. So connect, you come in, have access to our co-workable space, our lobby, drink our coffee and tea, use our Wi-Fi, and generally connect with those people, get access to some members only events and workshops, as well as partner discounts around town. You transition that, you start connecting, you find a band, you find some people at a mixer, and then you get into the rehearsal spaces. And then when you're ready to lay down some tracks, you go on the recording. And then, hey, there's also an all ages venue right next door. And we also have partners around town, and good relationships with those people that just allow us to also give you opportunities elsewhere to play. So you see this kind of general growth pattern within those memberships that we're able to cultivate your career with you. And ultimately we want to be alongside those musicians and enable them every step of the way.
So it sounds like you guys are creating like an ecosystem there for like every step of the process.
Exactly. And all those systems, those members of that ecosystem already exist here locally within the economy. They're just in those silos. So ultimately we're just providing a home for them to coalesce and to get to know one another. The amount of people at one mixer that were just like, oh my gosh, you are in my genre, or you live up my street and I had no idea, and you're just the drummer I've needed or the producer I was looking for. I mean, multiple collaborations were sparked out of just one pool of people coming into a room one time. So imagine what you could do with that when that access point in that room is 24/7 every single day. So
That's awesome. One kind of a hot take here. What do people say that like are against your ideas? Like obviously that I see the value in this. I can see all the positivity from it. But when you were going out into the community and asking these questions, and you know taking this design thinking approach where you're really getting that feedback, what was some of the negative feedback that you guys heard that maybe some people think, hey, this is not a good idea?
Oftentimes we'll hear something like, I mean, whenever you're going to shake the boat with innovation, whatever is the established norm is going to be, you know, somewhat in denial or somewhat in opposition to that. And so oftentimes we'll hear from places like local studios that we're going to put them out of business, or they might have concerns about those things. I think more so we're focused on helping people discover those local studios than necessarily directly competing with them. We'd love to help people figure out, hey, you know, you need to play to a click track for a while before you go into this studio, or, you know, hey, where can we get, you know, get that next level up of engineers and people who want to come in and use that equipment. And, you know, we'll help direct people to those studios rather than necessarily like poaching clients or anything like that.
Right.
I think that was a lot of the concerns we heard, even when we were first pitching, was just sort of the concerns for the current local music environment. And of course, whenever you're going to try and disrupt something, I mean, disruption can either have a positive or a negative like, you know, connotation to it, right? And so we just wanted to make sure that, like, you know, we are gonna, you know, we're going around talking with different studios, and just seeing what it is that we can do to help them, because we would love to ultimately see the local music community thrive. And it's more so, it's not necessarily, there's some things that a studio can do that maybe we can't do right now. And so you can think about us oftentimes as sort of your connection point to a lot of those things. And so if there's a particularly good engineer that we know of that helps you in your particular genre, we'll probably send you to them. We're not going to be like, well, we're better than them. It's more like, hey, like we're going to like, we know that you're in this particular genre and we know this guy is the guy for that genre. And so you need to connect to him. And so we're more so there as a general place to ask questions. Come in and just talk with us about your musical journey thus far. And if there's anything you want to throw a workshop on, or if there's anything that you want to communicate to people locally that you think isn't usually communicated, we try to help as many people as we can and really just give back as much as we can to the local community that's given us a place to even do what it is that we're doing right now. And so a lot of the negativity you'll feel even with any kind of startup is some pushback from the current system, just because of that whole disruption mentality that people have. And
Right.
we're not there to, you would think about something like disrupting an ecosystem would be a negative thing, right? But at the same time, oftentimes that disruption will lead to potentially new norms or things that are better for some of those organisms. And I think that for us it was a focus on the artist was what was necessary, right? So even like the city, like people talk about selling tickets to events, which is an important part of the ecosystem, right? But we think that if you support the artist as much as possible and you get them to be a really, really high top-notch artist, that those ticket sales will naturally follow because there's such an interesting thing to go see, right? So if you help them progress to a point where they're a more interesting act to go see and they have much more of a pull, that you'll see a lot more of those ticket sales. So rather than trying to focus on, it's a two-edged sword, right? Where, the city should be focused on that portion of things and then otherwise focused on the artist in another area, because it's important to focus in all of these areas. But we felt that, the artist itself, the artists themselves was the thing that we wanted to support and focus on. And I think that's what sets us apart in a lot of ways, and I think ultimately needs some disruption, because I don't think that the artist has been thought about that way for a long time.
No, I agree with you there. So before we hop into some rapid fire, and maybe Kyle will join us again here. Looks like we might have lost him. Where people can actively sign up. Was there a cap at how many people you were going to like set that up for the beta space before the proper space opens up? Like, where can people go find out more? And if they're interested in signing up for membership, like where can they get that information?
Absolutely. So reaching out to us is really easy. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, anywhere you want to find us. But our main website is www.sndspc.com. And if you go to just sndspc.com/beta, you'll have all of the memberships right there for you if you're interested in signing up. And it's just Soundspace without any vowels. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the whole drink culture thing too. So definitely, I love that whole indie vibe coming from that. And there's plenty of places. Pretty much just reach out in general, and we'll help you find what it is that you're looking for. And if you're interested in signing up, that's the easiest place to do that.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna have a little fun. We're gonna ask some rapid fire questions. So we'll start with this one, and hopefully you guys had an opportunity to take a look at the sheet we sent. I'm getting some feedback. Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Can you hear us? Okay.
All right. You're starting to come back, but I keep hearing like this weird robotic sound on my end.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. I think it sounds like it's coming from my microphone, but technology, right? It's the worst. Okay. So question number one, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? I was going to say the immediate thing I think of is my dad talks about prions all the time. My dad's an ER physician, by the way, so I guess prions are the thing that keep me up at night.
What a prion?
A prion is a misfolded protein in your brain, and it's typically Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease. It's like mad cow disease in people. It's not really something that I think I'd ever get, but it definitely that, and then things like aneurysms, or I guess from studying neuroscience for so long, all of the potential random things that could happen in my brain just that immediately kill me or have a slow, painful death are kind of what keep me up.
Rick, what the hell, dude? How dare you even put that into my mind for me now to worry about at night?
I'm so sorry.
Kyle, if you can hear us and you can answer, what keeps you up at night? All right, we'll wait for him to come back.
Am I here?
Oh yeah, there you are.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, it's all good.
Cool. I missed the questions. I literally only popped in and heard mad cow disease.
Yeah, you. Okay. The question was, what keeps you up at night? And Rick said mad cow disease.
Oh man. Wow. Yeah. Oh, I guess what keeps me up at night? Not drinking enough water. Drink more water, people.
Drink more water. Dude, I don't know, man. I'm working with a trainer right now. Shout out to Coach Hudson. And he's got me on this water program where I have to drink at least 100 ounces of water a day. And I try to smash. I typically get to like 70 or 80 ounces before bed. And then I just try to smash the last 20 or 30, like 10 minutes before going to sleep. Not a good
man.
idea. It is a terrible idea.
Yeah, so you're certainly the opposite.
I mean, that actually does. Actually, no. I guess water makes sense. That does keep me up at night because it disrupts my sleep and I go to the bathroom. All right. I loved asking this question, and I'm going to change it a little bit from how we sent it. That the proper question is, where's a place that people don't know about, like your secret spot to get away? But I like framing this as like, what is this spot in Indy that you like to go to that you don't think people know enough about, right? So my classic example is always Chapati. I love that place. I think it needs more people going there to go eat food. It's Pakistani food. It's delicious.
Where's this at?
It's off of like 54th or 52nd and Lafayette Road.
Okay.
Like right off 65. So it could be a restaurant, a bookstore, a music venue, a coffee shop, whatever your place is that you're like, man, I wish more people knew about this place.
I'm interested to hear Kyle's.
Oh man. I'm going to go food because I feel like the coffee shop places I frequent and then any of the music stuff I'd plug is pretty well known. I'm going to go two. Okay, music-wise, place you haven't heard of that you should go check out The Healer. The Healer is down on the southeast side of town. It's a completely DIY venue. It's in this old, like, abandoned, like, strip mall office building. And they actually kept each of the cubicles as its own independent, like, art installation. I guarantee you there's not a place you've been to, like, venue-wise, that looks anything like The Healer. And it's definitely worth going and looking out for one local act there. Food-wise, I've got two. Ezra's Raw Cafe up in Broad Ripple, tucked away up off of 65th. Some phenomenal vegan eats there. And then Fei Da is out on West 16th. Best Chinese food in town for sure. The takeout from Fei Da is phenomenal.
That sounds good. That sounds really good. Rick?
I mean, I would probably just shout out Calvin Fletcher's, mainly because it's kind of where I met a lot of the people that I'm working with right now, and it's just kind of the place that lets me come in and have the most business meetings. So it's kind of, it was my office for a long time, and just being able to come and meet people there, and it is definitely one of a kind and certainly an interesting place over on Fletcher Place. So if you haven't been there before, definitely check it out. But I think that'd be the place I would go.
Yeah, shout out to Calvin Fletcher's. I think that's the first place that I went to in Indy that made me love coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I went in. I don't even know what the reason was that I was going in there. I think I was trying to escape from my job and just like looking for things to do, like during the middle of the day when I worked in car sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there and I had an Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, and I was like, "What the hell is an Ethiopian Yirgacheffe?" but it had these tasting notes of like nuts and like dark chocolate or something. And
Mhm.
it was one of the first times it had just like black coffee, and I was like, oh my gosh, this tastes amazing. So shout out to Calvin Fletcher's. What are you currently obsessed with?
Ooh. Oh
Rick.
man. That's a tough question during quarantine because I feel like you can only do your obsession for like a couple hours a day before you're like, all right, this is a lot. Um, oh man, the first thing that comes to mind is I've been playing a lot of Diablo recently. Uh, so
Diablo, like that old
yeah. So I guess that's there. Otherwise, definitely, I don't know. I've been working on. This is gonna even be weirder. So
nothing's gonna be bad cow.
so a portion of the work I do with the green energy startup stuff is on something called Energy Toolbase, which basically pulls from all of the different meters that you can take a look at. And so I've been just really interested in sort of the electric grid in general and just understanding how that works. And we produce a lot of like reports for people, and I pull a lot of them from like generally accessible like electric meter areas. So like for example, the meter on your house would have it pulls its data every 15 minutes, just all the time. So you can just look at what electricity you've been using and all of your peak demands for every 15 minutes every year. And so it's really interesting to see that kind of data and then put it into a space where it's like, okay, how is it that something like a like some renewable energy source, or if you had solar panels, or for example, for us, we put it in our gasification systems, but how would something like that affect your bottom line price for electricity? And that's been just really interesting to take a look at, and kind of I guess maybe not an obsession, but certainly something that I've been it just blows my mind and kind of makes me think in a new direction.
We have totally different brains, dude.
That's great. Well, mine is potentially a little bit more relatable than electric grids and such, but I have 3 younger brothers, and I'm here with my family back home during this quarantine. So we're all grew up as athletes. We're all hyper competitive, I would say. So my general obsession right now is kicking my little brother's asses in literally everything possible around the house. So FIFA, Monopoly, anything at all. I mean, we literally take the fruit that is outside, or when the fruit goes bad, there is a tree like 30 feet from our backyard. All of us played baseball growing up, and we literally take the like rotten fruit and aim at the tree. And like, this is a game that like our like livelihood in this house depends on it. Like, if you don't hit the tree, you will not, you can't live it down. So
No dinner for you.
yeah. So anything that involves sibling rivalry for me right now is generally a good thing.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Last question here. Who would you, and just one person from each of you, who would you recommend as a future guest for us?
Oh man, Kyle's gonna have a real interesting answer.
I'm not going to have the first answer.
Maybe you can give us someone that can talk about mad cow disease or like electric grids on like crazy high level.
Oh man. Oh, I'm trying to think. Is it local specific?
You know what? With the way things are going and now being able to switch to doing Zoom calls, I would say no. We would just need to have like at least 1 to 2 degrees of connection.
Gotcha.
Feasible.
Oh man, I don't know if I could even get in contact with this guy, but I don't. I also don't know why he comes to my mind. But you've said mad cow disease, so I'm just going off. Um,
Can't wait to hear this man's or woman's connection to mad cow disease.
No, it's just I start thinking in science, and one of my personal heroes is Dr. Hugh Hare. Maybe because we talked about MIT earlier as well, but He lost his legs in, I think, a rock climbing accident, and then rebuilt them using like prosthetics and robotics. So I read a lot of his papers that he puts out. He's a really interesting guy and has a great TED Talk. So he would be really cool to talk to.
Dang. I wonder if you've probably done at least one podcast, right?
I have no idea.
How is it, hair like a rabbit or hair like on your head?
HERR, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, neither.
No, it's not. Great. So I'm gonna just take this time and commandeer like 4 local plugs. So as I've been thought, 2 artists and then 2 local entrepreneurs. So the 2 artists, the band, The Palace, they most recently just won the Battle of the Bands competition that was just hosted here locally. So they're definitely on the rise, and they have been some very dear friends of ours. And for me personally, even before the Soundspace thing came into fruition. So they're great, as well as Dan Giffen here locally. He runs all the Ableton Live producer groups here in Indianapolis, and is a like top tier producer. He did some live tracking for Mac Miller, and has done some other worked with a lot of incredible artists all around the world. So those are some 2 really interesting both the group as the band, and then Dan would both have some really interesting things to say. And then a couple of my friends that are local tech entrepreneurs. One company, Nick Turner, Deliver End. They are basically like Uber for Facebook Marketplace, right? So they take out those sketchy like Craigslist at the gas station at 3 a.m. transactions, and they have delivery drivers in the same way, right, that Uber picks you up for a ride, and they have a full app with that. And then I think specifically related to the economic hardship stuff, that a lot of people, particularly in our city and business owners and that sort, are experiencing right now, is a local company called the Halo app. They do peer-to-peer microloans of $100 to $1,000, and then that basically goes into a pool. You just request the amount and what you need it for on the app, and then backers on the back end can see that request and give you anywhere from a 0 to 35% interest loan that you can pay back, that you determine what amount of time you need to pay that back. So I know for a lot of people personally that, that being a resource right now is a pretty critical time. So, and I just think that innovative ideas like that coming out of minority-owned tech-based businesses here in our city are pretty phenomenal things. And I'm definitely grateful to have people like that in my circles that, challenge our own way of thinking and innovation on a daily basis.
I would want to plug one more person, and that'd be Diop Adisa as well.
Oh man,
he'd be a great person to have on, and bringing him into that. He's part of Kepra Institute, and if you guys haven't had a chance to talk with him yet either, they'd be an excellent guest.
Yeah. So what's funny is Dan is going to come on the show on Monday. We're going to do a YouTube live show with Dan Giffen.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, so in that case, I'm actually going to go back in and second that and throw Diop to the top of my list. What they do over at Kepra, and what Diop's story is himself as both an artist, entrepreneur, and social innovator in our city, is utmost respect.
We're going to make that happen this year, hopefully soon, because he's been recommended a couple times. But kind of along those same lines, Sirius Black just dropped a new album, and we're on the show.
Yo, that's my roommate. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. So basically, we want him to come on the show and break down track by track his whole new album.
That's awesome.
Okay. He's gonna be so mad I didn't plug him.
But yeah, we connected yesterday on Instagram. Sent him an email today to try to work out the logistics, but very excited for that. But yeah, guys, this has been awesome. Any couple last things or anything you want to say before we sign off here?
I'll give it the last word to Rick. For me, just take, especially in this time right now, but take these lessons with you. Always take care of those around you, especially in your local community. For us, it's been an overwhelmingly humbling amount of support and love from this community, not just musically, but all throughout the city. and what we've been able to do. For me, it's incredibly humbling. So go out and support those people locally, and take care of your neighbors, and they'll take care of you in return.
Awesome.
I love to say, just, if nothing else comes from, us talking today or anything like that, I would encourage people just to have the courage to pursue the things that are in their heart, and try to use their head to help them get there. So you want to take that journey from your head to your heart and make sure that you're using both of them in every day. The journey of 1,000 stairs starts with one step at a time, right? So it's much easier if you look down 1,000 stairs as 1,000 stairs. And so just taking those first steps and maintaining that momentum and keep taking steps every day towards those goals, I think, is an important aspect. And I would encourage anybody who wants to see change happen, anybody who wants to see positive impact in their community, impact on the environment, and just generally impact on their own finances, to just keep walking forward and pursuing something that both their head and their heart is heading them towards as well. As long as you're in harmony with those two things, I mean, anything's possible.
I love it. Mic drop, right? Thank you guys so much for spending some time with us today. I hope that you guys are staying safe and healthy, and look forward, once we get on the other side of this whole virus thing. I'm excited to see the success for Soundspace and what you guys are doing. I think it's super cool. So thank you for being a part of our show.
Thanks for having us, Drink Culture.
Awesome.
As we like to say, drink culture, know your city. We're out. We'll see you later, guys.
Thanks. See ya.
Take care. Peace.